right, here's another episode of the Antisocial Podcast, episode 201. And if you don't like the sound of my voice, turn it off. Just delete this episode and just wait until the episode that comes out Thursday nights where I have a guest on, if you prefer to listen to other people rather than me. But if you don't mind my voice or you can bear with it, it's tolerable, then keep listening, I guess. Hopefully there's something mildly entertaining that I can share with you all. But it's a crazy talk episode. It's my time to waffle on, crap on, say a bunch of rubbish, and let's get started. So thank you so much for everybody that got behind the podcast last week. I was a little bit worried that I had lost all momentum with the podcast, given that it hadn't been up and running for a few months, but episode 199.99 and especially episode 200 with Andrew Farris of InXS has gone very, very well, like ridiculously well. So thank you very much to everybody that's been sharing it around or just interacting with it on social media. I've always crapped on about this shit in the past, but you know, if you're liking it or love hearting it or retweeting it or commenting on it or just doing anything, just like tiny little things, it just helps with that whole algorithmic shit. So, you know, it pops up in people's news feeds and it tells these social media platforms that maybe something's worth sharing or worth putting in front of more eyes. So, yeah, it helps. It's a massive help. So even subscribing on things such as Apple Podcasts or following, or I think it's following on Spotify, I think. So just doing things like that can be a massive help because it just tells these platforms that it's valuable content. And so they'll favor it over other ones that aren't getting the same amount of love. So anyway, I'm sure you guys all know the drill when it comes to that sort of stuff, but it's been a massive relief and weight off my shoulders last week just to see it react the way that it has with a lot of people. So thank you very, very much. Now, I was in Brisbane last week, all week, and so I had set everything up and scheduled all these posts for them to come out automatically, and I was a little bit worried because actually on Thursday night I forgot all about episode 200, and it wasn't until about half an hour, or probably even less than that, about 15 minutes before it was meant to come out. I just got a little alert, sort of like a preemptive sort of warning to say this post is going to be published or whatever. And I thought, oh, geez, okay, I better do something. And I was actually I had plans that night, which I'll get to shortly. But it sort of on the fly, just sort of quickly posting things and sharing stuff around and whatever. And but it all worked out really well. So. People seem to really like the episode with Andrew Farris, got some really good feedback from that, and it was just cool to be able to have it hit the way that it has because it just validates the podcast itself. Yeah. And I guess a bit of a call to action to anybody that hasn't listened to it yet, give it a listen. And if you know anybody that is a big InXS fan or just likes podcasts and might find it interesting or whatever, tag a few mates or share it around in group chats or, you know, Messenger or text messages, I don't know, wherever. You guys know how to share stuff around. I shouldn't need to tell you, but just doing all that stuff and social media love and all that stuff goes a long ways because I really want to emphasize and give impact to the people that give me the opportunities to be able to speak to these legends, these amazing people, that it's worth their time to be contacting me to get these people on. If the credibility is there and they know that there's an audience there and there's a reaction, there's a bump from it, then it means great things. It means great things for me personally, of course, but even for you guys, just to be able to hear lots of interesting people. Because sometimes it's not so much the big names as far as music, artists and people that have got things to promote, but sometimes it might be a case of trying to convince those same people to do things face to face. That can be really tough, especially when people are doing press. They like to just do a blocked out time where they just do phone calls one after the other, and I hate doing them. I refuse to do them because it's just not what the podcast is all about. If you're a radio sort of program, or you're a webzine, or, you know, press or whatever it is, then those formats work really well because you're basically there just to do a quick sort of bite-sized interview to promote whatever they're promoting and just get it out, churn and burns, creating some content, etc., etc. But the podcast is so much different to that, and I've really been very sensitive to that, and I just want to make sure that whenever I get these opportunities, I'm actually able to spend a considerable amount of time with them and deviate away from the usual stock standard dumb questions that these people constantly get. And still be able to talk about the things that they want to talk about as far as plugging things and, upcoming tours or releases or whatever it might be, but being able to sort of really deviate and go off on a number of different tangents along the way, and to be able to do that face-to-face is huge. So you guys helped me make that happen. You guys made Andrew Farris happen. You've made all these other amazing guests in the past happen. And so it just continues to raise the branding of the podcast, reputation, blah, 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 blah. So if you haven't listened to episode 200 yet, do yourself a favor, give it a shot. I think it's pretty good. I reduced the amount of waffling on that episode. So for people that might not be used to long-winded intros, that's probably a really good podcast to kick on with, because I'm doing my best to refine them, so they'll be even shorter in future episodes to come. So the past week I've been in Brisbane, so I was up there for some conferences and some other some other bullshit. I shouldn't say bullshit, because it was actually some important stuff. But I didn't really have a lot of free time, but on Thursday, my night just freed up completely, and I was sort of looking around to see what was going on in Brisbane, and there was a gig on. It was Cattle Decapitation, Revocation, and what was the other band? Descent, I think. And I was umming and ahhing, so I thought, oh man, do I want to spend the money and go out? And I've got an early start on Friday, and I thought, nah, stuff it, I'll go out. And so I just messaged around, see whether anybody else I knew was going, and there wasn't too many. I couldn't really see many people online, but there was a couple of mates who said that they were going to be there. So off I trod from the city. I was staying at the West Inn so anyone that's familiar with Brisbane, I was staying in Mary Street in the city itself, and the gig was at the Tivoli in the Valley. So I walked from there. It was only a couple of kilometres, so it wasn't too bad. Get my steps in. And it pissed down rain. I just got absolutely drenched by the time I got there. But it was a great gig. I was so impressed with the show. All three bands were amazing. Descent was really, really cool, a really heavy band. I'm pretty sure they're from Brisbane, or at least Queensland. So I don't even have any links or anything like that, so I can't plug them apart from just saying their name. So it's Descent, Descent, I believe. But go and check them out. Really cool death metal. Revocation, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but that's a band that just pops up all the time. I know they've toured here a bunch of times over the years, but I've just never bothered to pay attention to them. Not for any particular reason, just sometimes it takes a bit of motivation to go and discover new bands, or a particular band, or whatever it is, and this band just never quite got there for me. I wasn't repelled by anything, or there's nothing that wasn't unappealing. It was just one of a million bands that I just never got around to listening to. But this is the first time I got to hear their music and actually see them play, and fuck, they were amazing. They were so good. Their frontman, both guitarists were amazing, really, really good guitarists, but their frontman was playing, I don't know, he was playing some sort of, from what I could recall, some sort of Jackson Explorer model, but he, he's doing vocals, obviously playing guitars, these great riffs, but shredding, some really good lead work. I was just standing there just going, oh my God, this is really, really good. So, great band, really enjoyed that, and I'll definitely be motivated to be listening to their music in the future as well, but highly impressed. So if anyone, by the time this comes out, I don't know if there'll be any shows left on their tour with Cattle Decapitation, but if there is, and they're in the area, definitely give them a shot. But Cattle came on stage, and I've only really got into them sort of in the past year. I think I'm one of these sort of bandwagon sort of recent fanboys that's jumped on with their new album Death Atlas, and that album's just ridiculous. I'm so impressed. They were just, once again, one of those bands that I just never got around to listening to, and just the same set of circumstances as Revocation, but I managed to hear a few songs off Death Atlas, and it was just ridiculously impressed with them, so good. And so that was a big motivator to go out for this gig as well. They were great, really good. The crowd was massive for this show. I think it was a near sellout. There was a lot of people there, and actually it ended up being a really good night, on top of the music, because I got to bump into so many people that I haven't seen in years. Lots of great people from growing up in Brisbane and going to sort of the local metal gigs, sort of local music scene. Lots of musicians were there, lots of great friends from just years gone by that I got to reconnect with and have a drink with. So I actually wrote down a few names just so I didn't forget them. So there was Southie and Gary, Alex, Shane, Ian, Kento, Andrew, Damien, Dave, Michelle, Lee, and the guy at the bar who was giving me shit because I kept checking in on my Untapped app on my phone. So every time I got a different beer, they actually had some really good craft beers there. A bit overpriced. I think I paid $12 for a Bolter XPA can. That should be illegal. That's fucking ridiculous. So if anybody from the Tivoli listens to this, shame on you. Bring down those prices. That's just crazy. I know that there's more to it than just jacking prices up, and I know there's a lot of overheads and licensing and all sorts of stuff, but fuck that. That was crazy. So, but anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Yes, I was checking in all my beers with the Untapped app, which definitely hurt me the next morning. But if anyone doesn't know what Untapped is, it's this beer app, and you can check in your beers as you go, so as you drink them. So for people out there that are big in the craft beer world, or just like drinking lots of different beers from all around the world, international beers, different breweries in Australia, you can, I don't think there's a link. I don't know what the link is, but just if you type in Untapped without the E, so UNTAPPD, and you'll be able to find the app. And what you do is you type in, so as you buy a beer, you search for the name of the beer and the brewery, and you'll be able to find it. Most of the beers are in there. It's very rare that you have to enter a beer in yourself. Most of the time, they're already preloaded in there. Like either the breweries themselves are adding them in, or first-time drinkers, like the first drinkers, I don't know what you call them, first-day issuer drinkers or whatever, are adding them in. But you can select the beer, and then you can add a photo. You can rate it out of 5, so you're rating the beers. You can add in descriptive sort of terms around the taste of the beer, like whether it's sour or, I don't know, tastes like cardboard. I can't remember. I never use that part. And what else can you do? You can check in where you've bought it. So the location of where you bought it. So if you bought it from a bottle shop or wherever, and where you're actually drinking it as well. So, if you're drinking at a different location, you can put the different location in. So I've been doing it since I can't remember when I first did it, but I really kicked into it around 2016 when I went on our honeymoon overseas, and I was in the Czech Republic buying like $1 beers from the supermarket and just checking in beers left, right, and center. It was so much fun. But yeah, I've been doing it for quite a while. I've got a really embarrassing number of check-ins over the years, but nowhere near as bad as some of the other people on there. Like some people really like their beer. So anyway. By the way, if you're interested and you want to go on Tap, just search for my name on there. I was trying to find if there was a share function where there's actually a link that you could share to people, but I couldn't find it. So if anyone's on Untapped and they can find that, tell me. Otherwise, just search for Andy Dowling. And it might come up through, I think you might be able to find people through Facebook contacts as well. So for a friend on Facebook, you might be able to, it might be all linked in that way as well. But yeah, get on there and you can sync up with me, and we can keep an eye on our alcohol intake as we go. But yeah, it was a really great night in Brisbane. Great to catch up with all these people. It was a real surprise. Like I was expecting to just be nonstop all week and not really get to see anybody at all. But it was really, really cool. Actually, one other shout out, one other person I didn't see, but they saw me, was one of my best mates, Tonchi. He sent me a message. I was walking from one side of the city to the other. I don't know, it might have even been Thursday afternoon, and I get a message or something like, and excuse the language, I don't even know what I'm saying, excuse the language, but he said, "Oi cunt, you in Brisbane, or did I just walk past your exact fucking duplicate?" And so I saw it, and I'm like, oh shit. So I called him, and I'm like, "Oh, where are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm on Ann Street or whatever." And I was like at the other end of the city. So I'm like, "Oh, no, I've missed you." And apparently he was on the other side of the road and was going to try and yell out. But he said it looked like I was on a mission. I was power walking. So who knows? So there you go. Shout out to Tonchi. It was a bummer that we couldn't meet. And you were off to, where are you off to? Indoor soccer or cricket or wherever? Something lame? I don't know. Anyway, you probably fared better than me in the morning anyway. So shout out to you guys. Thank you so much. For humouring me in Brisbane, and especially after I had a few beers. I was a little bit dribbly by the end of the night. So, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. I was going to mention also, like I was at this conference, and I won't go into too much details about the conference, but I picked up a bunch of books while I was there, and they're all like customer service books. And now you might be sort of glazing over going, "Oh, well, shit, like, that doesn't sound terribly interesting," but here's a pro tip for some of you musos out there in particular. I mean, it could be for anybody really. I mean, it's probably good advice for anybody, but in particular musos, get some customer service books, and if you're curious, I can give you a whole bunch of ones that I recommend. But if you guys want to engage with your audience, you want to build your fan base, you want to connect with people and build a tribe, get loyalty, breed loyalty, etc., etc. These books are just gold. And I'm not going to discredit music industry books, because there's plenty of great music industry books out there and some really valuable stuff. So please, if you're sort of looking down that path of getting books to digest, definitely get those books in sort of the music industry space, but get stuff that's completely outside the industry, because this stuff is, it's mainly sort of created for people in the corporate world, in the retail industry, things like that. And, you might initially think, oh, well, it's not really relevant to me, but this stuff is really, really valuable, and it can give you a complete point of difference to other people out there doing exactly the same as what you're doing. So for me, I get a lot out of it for the band, being Lord, but I also get a lot out of it with this podcast as well. So I've done sort of subtle things over the years to try and build things up, build more loyalty, get a bit more branding out there, whether it be for myself personally or for the podcast or the band, etc. And just do little things, little ideas, just to connect and get you guys interested in what I do. I mean, it's not manipulation or anything like that. It's ultimately trying to find the right people out there who actually give a shit about what you do, instead of trying to sort of take a blanket approach and just try and convince people that probably, they're not worth convincing in the first place. So lots of great stuff. The books that I picked up, which I haven't read yet, so I can't, let's just say I'm not going to recommend them, but some of these guys did some keynote speeches, and I got a lot out of the keynote speeches, so I'm hoping that their books are actually going to be quite good. So one book was called Exactly What You Say by Phil M. Jones. Another book was called, what else did I write down here? Ignore Your Customers by Mika Solomon. Obviously, it's a bit of a buzz title, but I assume that it's probably not a case of completely ignoring your customers. But anyway, there you go. I'll suck you in. And Talk Triggers by Jay Bayer and Daniel Lemon, Lemin. So I got 3 books there. They've been added to my pile, this ever-growing mountain of books that I've got to churn through, but I'm getting there slowly, just trying to read every day. But yeah, if you guys are in a band, I know there's a bunch of you guys that listen that are musos, and you're always trying to work out ways to, whether it be beat the algorithms on Facebook, or you're trying to build your mailing list through MailChimp or whatever it is, and I'll get to MailChimp in a moment, whatever it might be, or just engaging with people at gigs and trying to build that loyalty, this sort of stuff's really, really good. I think it's a bit of a secret weapon, because I can put money on it that the majority of bands out there, and I don't know globally, but at least in Australia, I would put money on it. The majority of musos are not reading these books or not listening to these books if they're in audio format. So I would highly recommend you guys check some of that stuff out. So if you want some advice or some recommendations, sorry, I don't know about advice, but anyway, if you want recommendations, hit me up and I'll give you a list of books that I've been reading. Maybe later on down the track, I'll start recommending a few books as well. But I think I usually post some stuff on Instagram, so if you follow me on there, I think I was using the hashtag Andy's Book Club, but I think a few other people have been stealing my hashtag. So have a look on there. There might be a few books there that you might get some ideas from. But otherwise, just hit me up on the socials, and I will find something to throw your way depending on what you're looking for. What else has been happening? Actually, on books, I was just going to mention what I'm reading at the moment as well, just for any of the book nerds out there. I'm reading The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, and I think the reason why this book's popular is it talks about a lot of stuff. I think a lot of people in the business world really love this book, and just people that are really big on self-development around discipline and consistency and attention to detail, and really sort of, the not delayed gratitude, but sort of playing the long game with the way that you approach your art, your craft. And this book is all about being a samurai, using the sword, and it was written in whatever year. I don't think, I'm just wondering whether I've got the year here without wasting everybody's time by taking too long to find it. But let's see if I can quickly find it and keep talking. 1643. There you go. The Book of Five Rings was written in 1643 by Miyamoto Musashi, undefeated jeweler, masterless samurai, and independent teacher. And there's a second part of this book as well called The Book of Family Traditions on the Art of War, written in 1632 by Munenori, victorious warrior, mentor of the shogun, and head of the Secret Service. So anyway, I'm only sort of a quarter of the way through the book, but basically the book so far is all about cutting people up, so it's pretty rad. but actually, one really cool thing that they mentioned in the book is the difference between hitting and striking. Basically, I'm not going to word this right. It's more elegantly, or elegantly, elegantly. Let's say that. I've had a few too many mountain goats here. Anyway, I'm sure it's written better in the book, but more or less, hitting is like just running into stuff. There's no purpose behind it. You're sort of just, there's no thought into it. You're just making contacts with stuff. So maybe walking through the house when it's dark and running into a wall, it's sort of that sort of equivalent. Or I guess in context of the book, it's going into battle against somebody and not having any strategy or any thought into what you're doing. You're just throwing your body and your arms and your legs or whatever you're holding into the fight without any thought of what's going on in the moment. Whereas striking is very much so thought through. There's focus there's strategy, there's planning, and there's a lot of practice and discipline that goes into the whole purpose behind what you're doing. There's intent behind it, whereas the hitting has no intent apart from sort of just crossing your fingers and hoping that something works. So it's a very interesting thing, because obviously I can find some parallels in different parts of my life where I could easily say that I'm hitting lots of things and maybe not quite striking. So there you go. So I'm reading that book. I'm reading a couple of other books. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head because they're not in front of me, but there's a Mark Twain book about him cruising through Europe in the late 1800s on a trip with a bunch of well-off Americans, and they're in Europe for a couple of months. And it's actually quite fascinating because it's his journal entries every day of him sort of being on the ship and then getting off and exploring these different countries, being in France, being in Italy, being in Turkey, being sort of through the Middle East, through Syria, and then through Greece, and just his social commentary along the way. And it's quite amusing because he definitely hangs shit on a lot of people, and there's a lot of interesting observations that he has along the way. And that was written, like, the journal entries were from the late 1800s, so it's pretty cool. And I've always been a little bit fascinated with Mark Twain. And this is actually the first book I've read of his. I've got a mammoth. Let me see if I can adjust this mic slightly so I can look up. What is this one? Hang on one tick. The Autobiography of Mark Twain. It's volume 1, and it's this gigantic book I've got, which I haven't even started reading yet. I bought that about 2 years ago. So anyway, there you go. So yeah, I can't remember what the book's called though. It's anyway, just look up Mark Twain travel journals and you'll be able to find that. But that's it's quite amusing. So usually what I do is I read a book like Mark Twain's at night, because it's not really, it's sort of more, it could be fiction in a way, it's something nice to read and sort of take in, and it's a story, sort of go off and sort of go into another world, and it's not sort of, revving up your mind to start thinking about different ideas and things. And then I'll usually read sort of strategy books or self-development books or business books or stuff like the Book of Five Rings in the morning, to start the day, just to try and get my head in the right space, start thinking of ideas and thinking what I could do to apply them for the day. And that usually sets me up quite well. I used to read some of that stuff at night, and it was so damaging because I could not sleep. I'd just get back out of bed and start tinkering away and doing different things and just not getting any sleep. So I've been a little bit more intentional about when and where I read particular books, and I try to read multiple books all the time. It probably means I slow down a little bit, but I think there's a time and a place depending on what you want to read. So, there you go. Now, so I mentioned MailChimp before. So for some of you guys, you may have got an email from me last Thursday night. I had another scheduled thing that went out, and I had about 1,600 contacts on there. And I think I mentioned sort of 1,600 odd. And I think I mentioned last week that I just had collected all these email addresses from over the years from all these different places. There's people that I'd had prior contact with in one way or another, because I just need to get started with my mailing list. And it's just, I've got my, if you want to, by the way, if you want to actually subscribe to the mailing list, you can go to andysocial.net or andydowling.net, and there should be a pop-up for my mailing list there, and you can put your email address in there, and you're sweet. But just to kick it off, I thought, I'll just dump a bunch of email addresses in there and see what happens, knowing full well that this might backfire on me. But I just did a resend out this afternoon, being Sunday, and it's got a pretty good open rate at the moment, but I think initially it was about a 32% open rate, which is not bad. It's actually pretty good for email. But I had 2 abuse logs against me from 2 people. So I don't know exactly what accounts for an abuse thing, but I think you click unsubscribe, and then I think there's an option to say whether it's spam or whether they class it as abuse or whatever it might be. So I've got two marks against me, and then there's a few unsubscribes, not as many as I thought. I thought there'd be heaps, but it was actually all right. And I was cleaning up some of my emails today, and I found an email in my spam folder from somebody responding to my email in like large impact bold font, saying something like, "I didn't fucking sign up for this mailing list. Take me the fuck off this thing, you piece of shit, rah rah." And I think it was someone from Chile, because their email address ended with oh no, I think Chile. I think it might be Switzerland. Is it CH? Is Switzerland? I think. Anyway, someone not in Australia, and because that narrows it down. And they were not happy, and so I tried to search for their email address in MailChimp just to make sure I could remove it, and I couldn't even find it in there. So I didn't even know how they got the email, and so I was probably playing with fire. I should have just deleted the email and left it go. But I thought I'd reply to them and just apologize and just say, "Hey, I've tried to remove your email address, but I can't see it in there. So I'm just assuming that you've already, unsubscribed or whatever." Even though when you unsubscribe, I can still see those email addresses. But anyway, I'll wait and see what comes back. He might just come back and hurl some more abuse at me. But I kind of get it in a way. Like, it's unsolicited material. And there's a lot of laws out there, and you've got to be really careful about it. So I definitely put my hand up. But at the same time, I read shit like that and I go, man, like, just fucking unsubscribe and delete the email. Like, just big fucking deal, So I get it, and at the same time, just like, fucking get over it, bro. So, but overall, it's been quite good. And I've got some really good emails back from people in response, just talking positively about the first email. I really want to know from you guys, like, whether what I can do for next month. So, because it was out on the 13th of Feb, I was trying to weigh out when I should actually put it out, because it's going to be one a month. So I thought maybe I might just make it an exact month later. So I think that works out to be the second Thursday of every month, which might just make it a little bit complicated, but I don't know. I'll work it out. I'm playing it by ear, but it'll be each month I'll put out a new newsletter and send it out to people. So let me know what you want me to put in there. If there's anything interesting that you think that I could be sharing, or something stupid or fun or whatever, let me know. Something that's not too labor intensive, because I want to actually make these things happen and not be turned off by it because it's so much work. But I want to make it interactive. I want contributions from you guys. So maybe if you guys have got shit that you want to plug, or stuff that you want me to mention, I don't know, whatever. It is whatever we make it out to be over time. So the first one that went out last week was just more of a, hey, this exists. This is all the shit that I'm doing at the moment, and let's just see where it goes. So it's really up in the air. It's there for all of us to mold and just turn into whatever we want. So I've got a few ideas of what I want to do, but I definitely want to hear from some of you kind folk as well along the way. And I will mention, speaking of email responses I got back from people, there was an email I got from one person, Manfred from Germany, and I'll quickly read out his email because, just to do him a favor, I'll touch on his question. So where are we? What did he write? From Germany, best wishes and thank you for the podcast mail. But I am more interested on how you survived the fire. The fire. I hope you are all good and well. Fallen Idols is fantastic. Best wishes. So there you go, Manfred. Don't care about my podcast, but you care about the fire, which, priorities are there. So good on you, Manfred. Now, I mean, I don't know how many people are interested. I know there's a lot of people overseas that listen to the podcast. I know probably a larger chunk are from Australia. So Aussies, I mean, whatever. They're probably not terribly interested in what I've got to say about all this stuff. But international people, yeah, we had all these bushfires over the past several months. It's been really, really bad. Like it's been catastrophic, and it's made, obviously globally, it's known. It's sparked up a lot of different topics and problems that are there that need to be addressed, whether it be environmental or whether it be government. I'm not going to get into a bunch of that stuff. I haven't had enough alcohol to really get into that sort of stuff. So, but I'll leave that side of it. But for me personally, we were okay. We were fine. Jess's parents sort of lived pretty close to the action, and we were trying to convince them to get up to Sydney one weekend where it was pretty stressful, but they chose to hang around. So, but they're all okay. Our house that we bought down the coast, which is close to where Jess's parents are, that got pretty close to the fires. But in the end, a house is a house. So, as long as we've got people that are renting in there, and they were okay. And I think they had the hose on. They were just doing whatever they could to just make sure that the house was as fireproof as possible. Well, there's only really so much you can do, but there's definitely things that you can do to encourage fire. But yeah, all those things were checked. Everything was okay. Everyone was fine. But I know a lot of people that lost houses, and know of people that have had people lose their lives, and as a lot of people have seen, millions and millions and millions and millions of animals have died as well. So been pretty tragic circumstances, very stressful for a lot of people. And I think just psychologically, it's just put a lot of people across the country on edge, just due to a whole range of different reasons, either the immediate threat of the fire, some of the bigger sort of topics around the environment or government, some horrible stuff that's been happening around that, or even for people that have been living in some of the capital cities. So, for Sydney and Melbourne in particular, I mean, I now live in the heart of Sydney, and for weeks, we were just inundated with smoke, and really, really like thick smoke, bushfire smoke. And, I mean, we're lucky, we're pretty healthy. We were worried about our little Larry, but we had him, closed up in the house, so he was okay. But there's a lot of people out there that have lung issues, the elderly, or some of the people that have got bad immune systems or other health conditions. They really suffered and were at risk. I think a few people died because of just the intense smoke, and it was just a real sort of, I don't know, like just a real depressive time, because, I'd go for these walks around, the harbour, and it'd just be a blanket of smoke. And it's just incredible to see, the harbour bridge and the skyline just completely engulfed in smoke. Or sometimes I'd be driving home and I'd go over the Anzac Bridge, and the Anzac Bridge is completely, it just looks like fog, but it's just like this dirty, dark smoke. And as soon as either the air vents open themselves up, or you get out of the car and you just get slammed with this smoke, and it was horrible and really horrible. And after a while, you almost start to get used to the smoke, and you can't tell whether the smoke's still there or not in some respects. And that's kind of a bit worrying, because you're inhaling this shit. So to be in a big city like Sydney and still have that kind of impact, I think people all across the country had their own experiences with it. Everyone was impacted in different ways and to different levels of severity. So very, very testing times. So over the past week and a half, or a couple of weeks, we've been smashed with rain. So much rain. It's actually gone from one extreme to the other. The country's been on fire, and we've had a massive drought prior to that, where it's been absolutely dire for large chunks of the country. And then we've gone to catastrophic flooding now. Like, there's parts of the country that are just completely flooded. People have died in floodwaters. So it's just crazy how it can just go from one extreme to the other. But the rain, in a positive light, has completely rejuvenated a large part of the east coast of Australia, and put out a lot of the major fires. And I've seen some stuff online where people have been taking photos of some of the areas that have been impacted by bushfires, and some of the vegetation starting to come back to life. So, life finds a way. So it's you just got to take what you can from it, and all you hope is that people learn, whether it be from an environmental point of view, government point of view, or just an individual point of view, our opinions, the way we look at things. We just hope that we get better as people. So, because this stuff's not going to go away. When it gets hot again, and maybe we'll get more fires over the coming months, or maybe it'll be it for the year, and we'll wait until the next sort of summer season, fire season kicks in. Who knows? It's all up in the air. So we've just got to get better. So so there you go. So a bit of entertainment, poor choice of words, but a bit of entertainment over the summer period. And nice of you, Manfred, to reach out and check in on me. So I appreciate that. What else is going on? Oh, so this week, there's a few things going on this week. So episode 202, I'm trying to keep all these numbers in the front of my head. 202 is coming out Thursday night, and that is with, spoiler alert, by the way, if anybody doesn't want to know who it is. It's James Norbert Ivani. James has been on episode 37. I looked that one up today, and he's back on. I went out to his place out in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, and got chatting with him about a whole bunch of different shit. So that'll be out Thursday night. As I mentioned about Andrew Farris, a bit of a call to action. I'd love for you guys to get behind this podcast this year and just really push it. So once that podcast comes out, please just give it a like, or just throw a comment in there, or if you want to share it around, excellent. You don't have to. Just a little bit of interaction on social media can go a long way. So that stuff just really, really helps. So that'll be out Thursday night at 8 p.m. So looking forward to that one. What else is going on in my life? I think I've covered almost everything. I've got these big notepads where I've just scribbled shit down. I was going to mention also in Brisbane, if you're ever in Brisbane and you've got time, and people from Brisbane will just be used to this stuff anyway. But I grew up in Queensland for the first 20 years of my life, I think. Yeah, 20 years of my life. And a large chunk of that was living in Brisbane. And every time I go back to Brisbane, I fall in love with the place again. It's like, in my opinion, it's the best city in the country. It's the best balance of lifestyle, city living, plus sort of that country vibe, and it's just really, really cool. And it's nowhere near that quiet, slow, behind the times city that it used to be years and years ago. It's come a long way, especially in the last 10 or so years. It's just a really fun place, really exciting place. There's lots to do. So each morning that I was getting up in Brisbane in the morning, I was going for a jog, or sort of jog's probably exaggerating a little bit, sort of like a bit of a power walk, and then maybe a trot at certain stages along the way, but along Brisbane River. And so I was going along, I think it was a Goodwill Bridge, because I was in Mary Street, so I was towards the end of near the uni, and so I'd go through, I can't remember the names, but is it Gardens Point or something like that? QUT? Anyway, so go dig around the back of there, and then go across Goodwill Bridge, and then go up South Bank on the other side of the river, go all the way down to the end, and I think it's something like Capella or Curripla or something like that bridge. So there's another footbridge. So these are two footbridges that have been built, I don't know, like maybe 15 years ago or something like that. And I think they were built after I moved away from Brisbane to Sydney. But so I went over that bridge and then came back up the same side on the city side, and then back to my hotel. And it was so cool. Like, sun was coming up at 5:30 in the morning. I was as I was getting ready to go out, and the amount of people out was just incredible. Even when it was raining most of the week, there was still people out cycling and jogging and walking their dogs or whatever, and all the paths are all set out with the cycling and the foot for walkers, The Walking Dead, and it was just, it's all well planned out, all well thought out, and it's just an amazing place. And anyone that's follows me on Instagram would have seen some Insta stories that I was taking along the way of just some of the things I was seeing as I was going for a walk in the morning. And one of the things I saw, actually, I was walking past the Queensland Museum, and for anyone that's not familiar with the Queensland Museum, there's a couple of really sort of massive, what would you call them? They're not statues. They're like, I just call them displays. There's a couple of dinosaurs on one side of the museum, and on the other side, there's a couple of life-size humpback whales. So there's actually three. There's two adults and a calf. And I was walking along South Bank past the museum, and I sort of just, in the back of my head, just thought of these whales. And the reason why I thought of these whales was when I was a kid, My parents used to take me, or my like grandparents, grandmother, or whatever, would take us to the museum. And in order to get into the front entrance of the museum, you'd have to walk through this large foyer, and it's sort of like an open public area. Like, even when the museum's shut, you can still walk through there. And on my Insta stories, you could see this. I might actually just post a video on my normal sort of Instagram feed, because you won't be able to see the stories now. But you have to walk in underneath these humpback whales in order to get to the front entrance. And for me as a kid, I had this ongoing fear of large things above me. So there was another place in Brisbane, in Aspley, I think it was, called the Hypermarket or Hyperdome or something like that. Brizzy kids will remember this. And in there it was just this really large sort of warehouse. It was a shopping center, but there was also like this large variety store. I think that was called the Hypermarket, and it was like, I don't know, like a Kmart on steroids. It was this massive place, and but in the ceiling, this very, very, very high ceiling as a kid anyway, and they had these giant smiley faces and things like that on the ceiling, and I used to be absolutely petrified. Like, I these things looming over me, I just couldn't look up. I had to always look down, and there's been a number of instances over the years growing up where I just had this real fear of large things that would just be over the top of me, and so these whales were absolutely traumatic for me. Like, I'd be on the verge of tears. I'd be shaking, and I'd have to cover my head and run towards the door in the hope that I just don't see one of these gigantic whales looming over me as I'm running underneath to get to the front door. And sometimes the front door wouldn't open properly. It would be stuck, or I'd pull it instead of pushing it, and then I'd start to freak out. And then a couple of times, I think, whether it be a cousin or a family member, I don't know who, would try and stop me and make me look up. It's just so, like, you guys are assholes. And it would be so bad. Like, even just thinking about it now, like, my skin crawls. Like, it's so ridiculous to say about now, because I'd like to think I'm an adult, at least by age anyway. And so I was just, heads elsewhere, and I'm walking past, and I sort of glance over, and I see the buildings there, and I just thought of it, and I've thought, man, let's take a detour and see if I can find them, because I couldn't quite remember where the entrance was. So anyway, I walked around the block, and I found where the two dinosaur displays are, and there's a T-Rex and a Triceratops, and I'm surprised they're still there, because they're so old. I think they were made in like the late 70s or early 80s or something like that. I'm sure you can see it online. I'm sure there'll be like a wiki article about it, but they're super cool. I mean, they look a bit dorky these days. They're not as sort of lifelike. I mean, I don't know what lifelike is anyway. But I like them, and they bring back a lot of memories. So I was there with my camera, taking a bit of video of them, and then I went on the hunt to try and find these whales, and I could not remember where they were. So I was circling around, and I was running out of time because I had to start my day as well. And this is about, I don't know, 6 a.m. in the morning. And eventually I found them. And so here I am walking up towards the entrance, and you can't quite see them because it's hard to describe, but there's a low ceiling at the start of this entrance, and then once you pass this sort of barrier that sort of sits down from the roof, then you go into this large cavity that just goes right up for, I don't know, 10 meters up higher, and then the whales sit in there. So as you're walking up, it's not until like the sort of almost the last point that you then see the whales. And the first, as I said, there's two adults and there's a baby calf, and they're life size, and they hang from the roof. They're suspended from the roof. And so when you walk through, the first thing that you're met with is the nose of the first adult whale, and it sits right there, and they've deliberately done it. They're a bunch of dicks. Like, they've done it to scare people like myself. And this nose is right there, and it's almost like touching you. Like, it feels like it is, and you just, like, for me, like, even like the other day when I did this, I was instantly overwhelmed. Like, it was just, short of breath. Like, nowhere near as scared as I was when I was a kid, like, I assure you. But I was just like, oh my God, like, it's all rushing back. And so I had my phone out, and I was videoing it as I was walking under them and walking to the other side. And then I turned around and videoed from the back as well. And man, like, it just brought back so many memories, and just triggered like this, almost what felt like, and like please, like, excuse me, I'm using this term very, very loosely, but there's PTSD in a way of like just being so traumatized as a kid from these gigantic things, and it just brought back some of that stuff, and I was just on a high because just pumping with adrenaline just from something that probably every other person or most other people would just not even bat an eyelid and just go, that's pretty cool. But for me, it's like, oh wow, like fucking hell. So I'll post a video on Instagram, like on my main sort of feed or whatever, so people can check it out. So go over there, and have a look. But yeah, oh fuck, man, I was not shitting bricks, but I was definitely sweating a bit more than I already was from the walk. So, some crazy stuff. Now also, a couple other things that are happening this week. I'm going to Whitesnake and the Scorpions at where is it? Kudos. I don't even know how you say it. My pronunciation of everything sucks, but whatever. The old Ace Arena out at Olympic Park, that arena. So I'll be seeing them on Saturday night. That's the 22nd, I think, Saturday the 22nd. So if you bump into me there, you're in Sydney, come and say hello. We'll have a drink. And what else is happening this week? I'm going to try and do a podcast with Cam Knight, who's a comedian from Sydney here, and have a chat to him. So we've been trying to do it for the past, probably 12 months, but just schedules and timing just never works. So at the moment, that's penciled in for later this week, late Friday, and we'll just cross our fingers and see when that happens. So I've actually slowed down quite a bit on recording new episodes because I am completely banked up. So I'm a little bit worried about doing more and then telling somebody, oh, by the way, the episode's not going to be out for like 3 months. So I want to try and churn through a few more episodes, and I'll kick back into recording some new ones. So not too many new recordings at the moment, but we'll play it by ear anyway. And I think that's it. I think I've waffled on way too much. Lots happening, but no doubt. Oh, was that a burp? That was a weird burpy noise. Anyway, yeah, all right. So, this Thursday, James Norbert Avani, that'll be coming out, episode 202. And if you're not already, subscribe on whatever podcast player, or follow on whatever podcast player you're listening to. If you're on YouTube and you're listening to these things, give a little sub or a like and all that shit, and just pass them around. It means a lot to me. But I really want to hear from you guys. Even these like crazy talk things, as I mentioned last week, I'm going to get some mates to stop by when they've got time, if it all sort of lines up, and I'd like to make it a little bit more interactive as well. So I don't know, maybe I'll give some of you guys a call and have a chat, or maybe just, I don't know, send me some shit in and we'll just make it a bit more interactive. Whatever, I don't care. Like, there's no rules in this, as you can tell. I'm waffling and I'm all over the place, and I'll probably had a few too many mountain goats. So on that note, thank you so much. Have a great week ahead, and we will chat soon. Bye bye. Larry.